So before we get started, Jack, everything you've been posting online has been awesome. Like it's such great information. And I feel like there's so many false, and we can talk about this on the episode, but there's so many false narratives and things getting posted around and people that are just under the impression that the Browns are essentially digging a grave that they'll never be able to get out of.
Welcome to the Dawgs podcast with your hosts, Blake Reneker, Justin Charles, and Josh All.
What's up, Browns fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Dawgs podcast, coming to you 1 week away from Browns football. So we decided to hop on, do a special Sunday episode. We got a very special guest joining us, Jack Duffin from the OBR, breaks down Browns salary cap. He goes into great depth. He explains how the Browns are able to spend the way they do, and is it sustainable, over however long this front office decides to stay intact and however long Jimmy Haslam wants to keep ponying up the cash. So we bring him on later. We can't wait to get a chance to talk to him, have him explain it to us because none of us understand it. So we searched all the way across England and found somebody who could explain the NFL salary cap to us and to all of you guys. Before we bring him on, though, remember, if you want to get your intros and your voicemails on the show, head to thedogspodcast.com, tap leave voicemail on the drop-down menu. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Make sure you tap the notification bell so you never miss any new content we're putting out. As we're inching closer to the season, it's officially game week, but there's an NFL game on Thursday. We're going to have a Cowboys preview later this week. You want to make sure you're subscribed. You want to make sure that notification bell taps so you don't miss any of the lives we're putting out, any of our post-game reactions, all that good stuff. If you prefer to just listen to the show, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, and Google. And lastly, I almost forgot all the important social media platforms, X/Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff. Just search at the Dawgs Podcast. We're on all of them, TikTok. And lastly, if you're looking for more Dawgs content, head to jointhedawgs.com, become an official Dogpack member on the Patreon page, get access to the private Discord, play fantasy football with us next year because all the leagues are full this year. But if we'd love to have you still come in, hang out, jump in a league next year. You get to be part of the Dogpack Discord episodes. You get to meet Browns fans from all over the world. It's a good time for everybody. So if you want some more dog content, you want to hang out with us, you want to hang out with other Browns fans, it's jointhedawgs.com, become an official Dogpack member. So we're very excited to bring into the show Jack Duffin. He does Browns salary cap, and he's a roster specialist for the OBR. We've obviously had Jake Burns on from the OBR, so we're excited to bring another talented individual from that platform onto the show. Jack, it's awesome to have you here from all the way across the pond.
No, thank you for having me, and cheers for making it work. It's funny sometimes when people are like, hey, can you come on the podcast? It's like, when do you record? When it's 2 a.m. my time, I'm like, yeah, good luck with that one. But we found a time that worked.
So what time is it over there right now?
We've got a 5-hour time difference.
Okay.
And then we get 1 week during the season when it becomes 4 because your clocks move just before ours or vice versa.
That's kind of tough to keep track of. I'm happy we were able to make it work out. My mom actually just got to Greece this morning. She's now 7 hours ahead of me. So I'm a little bit used to dealing with time zone differences and stuff like that. I have family over there. But we're excited to have you on here talking Browns salary cap stuff. It's kind of, I've been reading a lot of your stuff for a while now, especially when I'm arguing with people. I'll be like, well, have you seen this? Have you seen this? This guy knows what he's talking about. So in preparation for today's episode, bringing you on, I went through and I tried to read the article about the most recent news with Deshaun, and I was like, he's going to have to explain this to me like I'm 5. So can you just kind of explain to myself and what I would imagine, I know Justin and probably most of our viewers, explain it to us like we're 5. What are the Browns doing? How are they operating at a level that not a lot of teams are operating at? How is it sustainable to spend money like this? Just kind of take us through everything, I guess, and we'll kind of interject in and out.
Yeah, so we'll start with the core principles of what Deshaun Watson's contract is, and it's $230 million, and he gets paid $46 million in each of the 5 years. So every single year pays the same amount. And what they're effectively doing, because the way the NFL salary cap works is you can defer payments is probably a way of putting it. The same way if you go out and buy a sofa, it's like, hey, buy now, pay it in 3 years. it's not like break your bank science. It's just a way that rather than taking, say, the full 46 million this year, you go, we'll take 1 million this year, and then we'll split 45 million over 5 years. So, hey, that's what total 10 million this year and 9 in each of the next. My maths is right off the top of my head. No, it's a little bit less than that. What's 45 divided by 5? Yeah, that's 9.
9. I do know that.
10 million this year, 9 in the next 4 years. And they're doing that not just with Watson's contract, with everyone's. Some teams might pay massive base salaries to a player, but the biggest base salary the Browns have got this year is Jack Conklin at $4.5 million. Everyone else, they're pushing that payment out. And what they're doing by pushing that payment out, if you just take like Watson's deal, if you paid the 46 million each of the 5 years, over that time, because the salary cap goes up, you're paying roughly 93% on the salary cap. Whereas by pushing that out and going, hey, we're going to pay that big bill in 2027 when the salary cap might be 320 million rather than 200 when he signed the start of the deal because it goes up so quick, you're only paying 81% on the salary cap. And just they're using that logic of going, well, we'll pay it in the future when the salary cap's so much larger. And because they're structuring it that way, and because Jimmy Haslam is willing to throw an insane amount of cash at this team, what they can do is they can just spend more than other teams. So it's roughly about 50 million a year more they're paying than the average NFL team. And when you talk about the middle of the budget was about 250 million last year in cash terms, that is a significant sum. It's not like, hey, you hear all these big numbers in the NFL and 50 million extra. It doesn't sound too much. But when you're saying, hey, that's about 20% more than average, that is a significant figure. And because the salary cap keeps going up, they've built a sustainable model. So each year I'm like, oh, they'll spend around this much on the salary cap in terms of cash. And it's usually pretty close. They've gone a little bit up this year, but it's within the sort of realms of nothing crazy. And yeah, they've got two good things. They've got smart people, Andrew Berry, Paul DeBodesta, come up with this plan and they're executing it. And then they've got Jimmy Haslam, who has really, really deep pockets. Because you look at some owners like the Bengals, you look at owners like the Raiders, they are rich because they own an NFL team. Jimmy Haslam is rich, and owns an NFL team. So he's just got more cash that it's burning a hole in his pocket, and he's like, hey, let's just spend this money.
So can you just explain then like the difference between cash spending and salary cap? Because I know there's a big difference there, and I think a lot of people get those confused or just assume they're the same thing. They look at a guy's cap hit, but you always talk about look at the cash.
Yeah, so if we take sort of Deshaun Watson this year, he's getting paid 46 million of cash. But what they're doing with that 46 million, he's got 1 million of base salary, he's got 9 million of signing bonus. So he cost 10 million on the salary cap for just this season. And then next season, there's 9 million of what they've paid him in this year. So it's the same 46 million, it's cash versus cap, but it's going to hit on the salary cap in next year, the year after, and the year after that. So it's a bit like just an accounting mechanism. It's not one where, hey, if you paid 46 million of base salary, it'd be 46 million in cash, 46 million in salary cap. But because they've used a signing bonus, they're just moving that payment into future years. And people look at it and freak out. And it's like, but does it really matter? It's like, Deshaun Watson is going to earn 230 million for his 5-year contract. Doesn't change the way you pay it. He's still earning that money. Would you rather defer the payments to future years? And people are always like, oh, but it will stop us signing someone else. That same logic that they've used to defer the payments, the next guy they sign, or if they extend him, they can just defer it again. So you just keep deferring it. And it just makes sense. $1 today spent when you account for it down the line could be 25% less because the salary cap just moves that fast.
Is there risk to this kind of method? Like, well, I always hear you can kick the can down the road, but eventually we're gonna be stuck. Is that true? Are we gonna be able to just keep kicking it and kicking it and kicking it? What are the pitfalls or potential risk of this strategy?
Yeah, so if you're not fully committed to it and you're just kicking it with one or two players, it's going to pinch at a point. The way the Browns are doing it, where it's an organizational decision of like, hey, we're going to push everything. as long as the salary cap keeps going up, there's no issue there. Obviously, if you're paying really, really bad players and then want to get out of them 1 year into the deal, that's going to cause problems. You've just got to be smart with who you paid. If you sign 3 contracts worth 20 million a year and then you want to cut them all a year into it, whatever way you manage the cap, that's going to cause you problems. So that's it. And the other thing, if there's a black swan event like a pandemic when the salary cap crashes, the Browns are screwed. But I wouldn't manage the cap based on, is another global pandemic going to happen? Because that's just, you can't live that way. That's why people live in bunkers and like have God knows how many tin goods in their shed, that they're terrified of the world's going to end. But you just can't live in that world. And if we changed front office, it's going to suck for that next front office coming in if they want to change guys because this is built this way. But if you're committed to this front office for a while, there is no real risk here.
Well, that's good to know, because I don't think these guys are going anywhere. At least that's the way I get it.
Gives them some extra job security because no one else wants to take over from it. Because if you came in with some guys, you're like, hey, we're just going to get rid of these 5 guys and we'll bring people in. But you can't have that sort of, hey, one-off season, we're going to gut the roster. It would have to be a gradual phasing guys in and phasing guys out. But like a Myles Garrett, he's here until he retires. There's several guys like that once someone retires, that's easy. It's cap management. If you wanted to go, hey, we're going to cut Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, and who knows what, someone else this next offseason, yeah, that's going to create tension. But if those guys retire and the deal's done its course, no issue.
So can you talk about dead cap a little bit? Because that's another thing that the term gets thrown around. This guy's got this much dead cap, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know. You did in your article just a really good job of kind of breaking down what dead cap really is and why it's not this big doom and gloom type thing.
It does sound quite menacing as a thing like dead cap. It's not like a nice thing. It's not like rainbows and teddy bears. So people see it and do freak out. But effectively, it would be like buying a holiday on a credit card and you come back 6 months later from holiday and you have to pay the bill. It's the same concept of like, you've had the holiday, but you need to pay for it after you've been on holiday. And so that would just be like calling it dead spending and go, well, you've got to pay for this holiday. You've already gone on the holiday. It's gone. It's in the past. Dead cap's the same way, where you've deferred the payment on Deshaun Watson and gone, hey, if you're picking up a bill of, say, 50 million of the 230 that he's paid the year after he's left the team, it's dead cap. But the whole logic of why they're creating dead cap and pushing it out is going, hey, we'd rather pay that bill in 2027 or something when the salary cap's 300 and something million than when it's 200 million. So dead cap's an accounting trick rather than a negative. And that you might get to that year and the dead cap is X amount. The cash is actually 0. And that's the thing you manage, where you then go and you can throw another 50 million at maybe another quarterback, someone else, but you're giving that cash and then you're deferring again. So yeah, dead cap, people freak out about it because what the Browns do isn't that common. The Eagles are around the same thing. So you look at like Jalen Hurts deal, all of that is deferred every single year of the deal. But no one's freaking out about Philadelphia.
Big news, Dog Pack. We are thrilled to announce we have a partnership now with BetStamp and Sign Up Expert, opening up an incredible opportunity for you to join some of our favorite sports books and get the best odds and new user offers this NFL season. Head over to our dedicated page at signupexpert.com/dogs, DAWGS, to explore a whole selection of sports books tailored to your region, each with unique offerings for you. If you guys are ready to take your sports betting to the next level this NFL season, head over to signupexpert.com/dogs, DAWGS, and check out the new user offers and the best odds on all the sports books. That's signupexpert.com/dogs. Okay, so I would say that kind of makes sense. So dead cap is just money that, I mean, the guy's already gotten the cash, but in terms of your bookkeeping, you still have to account for it just later on whenever. I like the idea of pushing it into further years because, like you keep saying, if the salary cap is 250 right now, why would we want to pay a higher number now when we could just pay that number in 3 years when the cap might be 50 million more? Like you keep pointing out, the percentage is what we're worried about. So the percentage of the cap space goes down the more we push it out.
Yeah, 100%. So it's just like, hey, deal with it in the future. And it's one that, as long as you're sensible with what you're spending, and it's about 12% more than the salary cap is what they spend. So say the salary cap was 100 million for hypothetical, they'll spend 112 million. And then say the salary cap's 200 million, they go, hey, we'll spend 225 million. Or I think it might be higher actually. Let me just pull up my chart and I'll give you the exact number of what they spend year to year. I've got all sorts of charts in Google.
Yeah, I mean, the way you break it down...
120%. So
okay.
If they say the salary cap was 200 million this year, they'd be spending about 240 million. If the salary cap gets a couple of years down the line and it's 300 million, they're going to go out and probably spend 360 million. And they know that if they spend only like 20% more than whatever the cap is, that's a manageable number with the size of the salary cap rises that are coming down the line.
So I guess another question I have then, they did the most recent restructure with Deshaun, and we now have the most available cap space in the NFL currently. So there, a lot of speculation was, are we going to go make a move or are we using it to roll over? So when we say roll over, what does that entail? Is that now, just explain what that means. If say we take I don't know the exact number we have to roll over into next year, how does that affect what next year will look like?
Yeah, so I don't want to dampen anyone's parade, but they have created this cap space to roll it over. So don't be looking at random players that we're going to trade for this guy and he's earning 30 million a year. They've created that. It's 51.2 million or something at the moment. That won't all roll into next season. They'll spend some on like injured reserve, maybe call up a few practice squad guys, little bits during the season. But let's say they roll over 45 mil. That then goes on to next year's salary cap because there's no limit for how much you can just move into next year. And so they're creating this surplus to then go, hey, that helps paying for next year. And then next year they'll create another surplus and roll it into the year after. And you just can constantly roll it over. If you were like the low spending Cowboys or the low spending Cincinnati Bengals, you could be sat there with like 120 mil of cap space. The reason those owners don't want to follow this sort of model, because it would just show everyone how poor they are at investing in their team. Because if you're a fan base and your team's got like 120 million of cap space, you're thinking, come on guys, we want to try a win here. People don't mind what the Browns are doing because they're sat there with 50 million of cap space, but they've also got the most expensive roster in the NFL at the moment. So it's that balance of the two, and you can do both, but you just got to keep rolling that over, and that just helps pay for the tab next year, kick some more money into next year, and it just, the cycle in theory should never stop.
So I have a question then. So in terms of this year, if we hadn't restructured Deshaun this year, were we good in terms of being within the constraints of this year's salary cap?
So you'd have been fine this year, but then when we get to next year, that 120% that I said they roughly always sit around, they wouldn't have been able to keep spending 120%. Because they've taken a bigger hit this year, that sustainable model of spending 120% kind of goes out the window, and you have to, say, bring that down to 115% of the salary cap just to keep managing it. So the idea is you push everything, spend 120%, push again, spend 120%, and because the cap goes up, you can keep cycling through. So it's one where they always really had to. And at the end of the day, for the people like, oh, this guarantees Watson's here for another year. Watson was only getting traded next year if someone wanted to take on 46 million for 2025 and 46 million for 2026. At the minute, he's not playing at that level where someone's like, hey, I'll trade 92 million and bring on this player. Because you're trading contracts. People look at trading players. Generally, you're always trading contracts, and it's why Amari Cooper went for a fifth. It wasn't because Amari Cooper, the player's worth a fifth. It was teams like, I don't know if I want to pay him 60 million over 3 years. So it's one that Deshaun Watson's probably here for all 3 years because there's not that trade. And if the team was willing to turn around and trade for his 92 million, it probably means he's a top 8 quarterback, and the Browns then wouldn't be trading for him. So it's one of embrace the 230 millions here. How do you do that? And we saw the benefit of it last year. If they weren't spending 50 million a year more than the league average, Joe Flacco is not taking this team to the playoffs. As much as people want to praise and put the benefit on Joe Flacco, it belongs with Jimmy Haslam and Andrew Berry, because if you wipe 50 million extra out of the roster last year, that's no Zadarius Smith, throw a rookie in there, that's like 10 mil. Who else do we get rid of? We can just go around and start throwing out players. If you take 50 million of talent off that roster last year, teams that lose their quarterbacks generally end up in sort of the top 6, 7, 8 picks in the draft. That's where we would have been. But you spend 50 million extra on the roster, suddenly the floor goes right through the roof.
One other thing that I want... Oh, go ahead, Justin.
So just while you were talking about, the Deshaun, contract and, kicking it down the road and stuff like that, something else that I've kind of heard, and I don't know if you can kind of go into that or not, is let's say they extend him for another 4 or 5 years. Something like a model that I've heard is you continue to just kick it down the road every year of that contract as well. So then that spending, I guess, would continue to go. I guess, I don't know if it would go up. I guess you can kind of explain that better than I could.
Yeah, so initially when he was traded for, it was like, hey, this is 5 years. They get sort of 3 years into it, and then we just extend him again. Maybe, hey, who knows? By the time we get to next year, it could be like 55, 58 million a year, but you just pop that deal on the back of it, and you continue to just let it keep going up. And yeah, you push it all the way out. And what you can do when a player retires is effectively you give them a fake contract until the 1st of June, and then you split that final dead cap over 2 years using a post-June 1st retirement. It's just a creative way of splitting that dead cap at the end. And when you do it over 2 years, suddenly it doesn't even really look like people are like, well, it's 80 million, and then it's like, oh, it's 30, and then it's 50. And that 50 million is just bounced into a year where the salary cap might be 340 mil. You're like, yeah, who really cares?
Yeah.
So when players retire, super easy cap management. It's just if you wanted to force him off the roster, there's a little bit of pain, but worst case scenario, the future beyond Deshaun Watson's probably like a first round draft pick. And if that's the balance you have to get, where 1 year you go from paying 46 million to you're paying about 10, bite it for 1 year and then throw a load more money back at it. Does it really matter? It's like, no, you just keep rolling. And as long as there's a super talented roster around it, hey, there's a lot of rookie contract quarterbacks that have had decent playoff success.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that makes... So what you're saying is to kind of calm everybody's fears out there, these big numbers that get thrown around with Deshaun's contract, like if we get to the end of the deal with him and we don't extend him and it's not going to be like a longer term thing for whatever reason, we're not just screwed. We're not in rebuilding mode for 10 years. Like we can just continue. We can get a younger quarterback on a cheaper deal, continue the same model, put tons of talent around him, keep spending cash, and just go.
Yeah. At worst, it's going to be sort of 1 year of bringing a rookie. And you balance that down. But after that, it's fine and it's done. Next year, as early as that, if Deshaun Watson doesn't play well, or who knows, he might get injured again and it's really serious this time, and it's like, hey, there's no coming back. You're still stuck with the bill, but potentially Kirk Cousins, 27.5 million next year is all he's due to earn. Give a call, connect Stefanski. They've already found their quarterback of the future. That could be one they turn to, where they go, hey, Deshaun Watson's the arm gets injured again and can't play. I'd say that's a name you look at where that's a solid bridge for a year where 27.5 million for Kirk Cousins. He's going to come take you to the playoffs. Who knows what's going to happen at that point? Or you just go and draft someone in the first round. Got a first round pick back. Maybe the trouble is this roster's too good. So even if Deshaun Watson missed half the season, you're still going to be picking sort of 18 around the playoffs, if not further. So it's one, maybe you package a couple of firsts and you trade up to the top 8, top 6 to get a guy. But no, it's one that I'm just not worried. People love creating these horror stories and looking at numbers, and it's like, if you're looking at what the Browns are going out and spending, as long as Jimmy Haslam keeps throwing money and Andrew Berry and Paul DePodesta are working their magic, it's pretty easy and simple.
I'm glad you think it's easy and simple. But I like to hear that we, despite the large sums of money we're giving players in Deshaun, we still have like roster flexibility, which is you always hear teams they're in cap hell. They can't do anything. They're trading players for a fifth, like Amari Cooper and all that good stuff. And we're sitting over here spending $50 million more than every other team, and we still have roster flexibility. It's like we're playing chess and other teams are playing checkers.
100%. And it can be done. It takes the whole organisation to commit to this approach, which they've done. And as long as they keep bringing in good players, and it's why the draft's so important, because you spend a load more money, but you keep drafting some decent talent, and that when guys are leaving 10 years down the line, you bring new guys in. And it's why it's important to draft young. People always get frustrated around the draft, and I bang on about the draft, the age guardrails, stuff like that. But if you draft a guy that's 21, he's probably got a 10-year career. If you draft a guy that's 24, got a 6-7 year career. And when you've got these guys like your Myles Garrett's, your Denzel Wards, your Njoku's, where you're like, hey, this is 10 years of that first round pick versus 6 years, it's a dramatic impact on how fast you have to churn a roster through. So just keep ignoring the old dudes and drum up as much young talent into the team, because if you hit, that is so much more beneficial.
One thing that I think you mentioned it way at the beginning of this, and I've been wanting to say something to you just to explain what void years are. Can you explain how that works, what they are, how the team uses void years on these contracts and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so with a signing bonus, where I said you can split it over 5 years, it's up to 5 years. So it's how many years are in the contract. And effectively, void years are just fake contract years. So there might be some rule in there that if a player plays 1,000 special team snaps, then this contract year exists. And if he plays less than 1,000 special team caps, it automatically cancels on a certain date. So they're farcical things. And I think it was a few years ago, Taysom Hill's numbers came out where it's like, oh, he's given this like $500 million 4-year deal. And it's like, you're just reporting void years where they just write really funny stuff into the deals because players are like, yeah, we don't care. We know it's nonsense. But effectively, it allows someone that's under contract for 1 year to split that signing bonus over 5 years because you're putting fake void years into the back of the deal. It's a clever accounting trick. It doesn't actually mean anything, but they just need something in there because it's up to 5 years. The signing bonus gets split over.
Does that impact the cap or not, since it's bonus?
It still lands on the salary cap, but it's how you spread that sort of $9 million over the next 4 years, because Deshaun Watson's under contract for 3 years at the moment. You've got this year and 2 more years. They need 2 fake void years on the back end so they can split it over 5 years. Else it would be sort of that signing bonus would only split over 3. So it's an accounting trick to push more money into the future. And that's where it becomes dead cap, because once the player leaves the team, you've got these void years, which were never really real to begin with. And that money just then rests on the salary cap.
So I have a question, and it's kind of like way out of left field. And and I don't know how much if you don't know the answer, just tell me. But so when we see a team like the Bengals and Jamar Chase doesn't have his contract and T. Higgins was franchise tagged again because of like they don't have his deep pockets, is that roster going to get blown up? I was just because we're talking about why doesn't every team do this? And you're talking about, you mentioned the Bengals a couple of times, like, if they can't do something like this, is that even sustainable? Like, are they going to lose everybody?
Yeah, so they don't tend to ever guarantee players money into the second year of a contract. So they guarantee the first year. And this why you see them sometimes get insane signing bonuses where it's like, oh, you got paid how much? The Browns will happily guarantee it and don't mind, hey, they'll guarantee all 5 years if that's what it takes to get the player signed. But they throw all the money right in at the start, and then it's smaller 1 year, effectively like 1 year team option deals where they can always get out of it. And players don't like that because players only really deal in what's guaranteed. If the agent and the the team are coming to a deal. It's like, hey, the first 3 years are guaranteed, and then after that, the team can just walk away at any point, and you're out as a player. And so that's why people don't like the Bengals from an agent and player view, because you've just got no job security. If you get injured, hey, they'll just toss you out the door next year. Whereas if you get 2 extra years of guarantee with the Browns, you're like, that we're doing right by players, right by agents, and that goes a long way, because free agency, you're not just competing over money. There's obviously state lines, tax implications, but you're going to a team that, hey, this team looks after their players, this one doesn't. And yeah, they're just poor. Poor. I'm using air quote marks here because I wish I had probably had the bank balance of the Bengals ownership group, but it's one that, relatively speaking, they're cash poor. That impacts everything going on there. So who wouldn't love to have, hey, if you swapped Deshaun Watson for Joe Burrow, if you swap Jamar Chase for even like Amari Cooper, just with the age difference, if those kind of weapons were on the Browns, it's insane. If the Chiefs were willing to spend like the Browns did, it would just be the Kansas City Chiefs winning every single year rather than every other year. So it's one that people go, oh, it hasn't given us a Super Bowl, so it's obviously not working. And it's like, if you're the GM and you're the owner, you can only do so much. They're committed and done everything they can. It's now just the players on the field have got to make it work.
This episode is brought to you by Bodden Sports. Browns fans, Bodden Sports is your one-stop shop for all your athletic gear. Bodden started out perfecting and manufacturing the best balls in the business. Yeah, if that sounded dirty, that's more about your mind than my words. But hey, it's true. Baseballs, softballs, footballs, basketballs, volleyballs, soccer balls, you name it, and Bodden has engineered the highest standard sports balls available. And now they offer more than just sports balls. If you got kids playing baseball or softball, Bodden has batting gloves and bats to go along with both game balls and training balls. If you're into basketball, Bodden makes basketball specifically for indoor or outdoor use. Heck, Bodden even has all the equipment you need for pickleball, which is one sport that I hear everyone is playing and yet I still never have. And I need to fix that soon. But don't miss the backyard games section of Bodden's website, where you can order everything you need for this upcoming outdoor season. Pool balls, backyard volleyball nets, croquet, bocce, horseshoes, cornhole, and more. Right now, you can get 10% off your entire order at Bodden Sports, BADEN sports.com/dogs, DAWGS, and use promo code DOGS when you check out. That's 10% off all the top quality sporting gear you need this season. BoddenSports.com/dogs.
You mentioned the Bengals a couple times, and anytime I get a chance to make fun of how poor they are, I don't pass up on it. So I just wanted to get your input on that.
Poverty franchise, that is the official terminology.
I love it.
I've also got some left field questions for you. I guess the first one, how'd you get into this, man? You know, like, are you I don't want to, you don't have to disclose your job, but are you an accountant? Are you, or is this just like a fun hobby that you got into and just kind of ran with?
Yeah, so I got into this, watched the film Moneyball and then read the book. And if you enjoy the film, I really, really, really recommend reading the book, because it goes to another level of detail about what they're actually doing and sort of the thought process. So I was interested in the NFL from years ago when I was a kid. I went over to Florida. It was New England Patriots versus Miami Dolphins on TV, and I was like, hey, one's got England in the name. I'm like 7 or 8. I was like, I'll support them guys. So as I grew up, got more interested in the NFL, just playing like fantasy football and stuff with my mates, and read Moneyball and everything there. And I was bored of supporting the Patriots because they were winning, and it was like, it's like people are like, are you supporting them because you're a glory hunter? And I'm like, no, I was just a kid and saw England, and I was like, oh yeah, England, I know that place. And then I was looking for a new team, and Paul DePodesta joined the Cleveland Browns. So I'm like, I'm a Browns fan. Let's go for it. I didn't realise what I was getting myself in for. One win in the first 2 years of being a Browns fan, but the thought process, and genuinely appreciate what they're trying to do. It was a rocky patch for me with the Dorsey era, doing lots of things I didn't agree with, but held strong, and Andrew Berry's come through for me. So it's only Paul DePodesta, legit the only reason I'm a Browns fan.
Very cool. All right. So the other thing is,
the salary cap stuff was just interest. Where sort of sport in England, the UK, if you've just got money, you just spend more on everyone else. It's a bit like baseball in a way. There's a salary cap, I think, in that, but it doesn't really work. So you just throw money at it. And that was what fascinated me, because it's the decision-making process of, well, you've got the draft. Why are you doing certain things, positional value, and then contracts? And I kind of just got interested in it, read some other people who were doing stuff either over the cap as a site or just different people from other teams. And I was like, why is no one doing this for the Browns? It was like, then I just started filling that space, and it's been a blast.
Yeah. So the other thing I got for you, I saw your couple minutes outside of London?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was born in Oxford, about like 45 minutes from you. But so growing up, it was all about soccer, Formula One, stuff like that, racing. But how is the popularity of the NFL kind of, is it what it's kind of reflected over here? And how has it grown as far as in England and, Europe?
It's been massive, the growth. So it's been sort of classed as the fastest growing sport in the UK for years. And I think that's partly just because it was coming from such a low bar. But the games over in London, more games being on TV. But then it's like friendship groups getting into fantasy football, because that was the point that really moved over from me. I just played Madden really up to that stage and might watch the Super Bowl. And then you start playing fantasy football and you're like, hey, I need to watch this season for all 16 games at that point. God knows where it's going to be in a couple of years. But that was where it went from a level beyond, where it was like, I need to know sort of all the teams and what's going on. But it will continue to just keep growing. And who knows, I could see a route in the future where you're talking about 4 teams in Europe, a whole division over here, maybe sort of 1 in Germany, 1 in England, maybe 2 in each, because then they can play all division games over here and probably live on the East Coast and just fly over for games. But I certainly see that as a potential route it will go.
All right. And then side question, how many fantasy football championships do you got? Have you brought one home yet?
I brought a few home.
That's all I need to hear. Hey.
Dynasty.
There you go.
I had some great dynasty success, some really, really strong teams that came strong. And it just dominates. So even 3 years on, it's only when last year I won it and I had 3 of my best players, like Nick Chubb, were all on injured reserve, and it was I'll have to put CMC in this week. And it's when you've got CMC, Chubb, Barkley, and you've just got all these weapons, it's this is easy.
So basically,
it sounds like you took advantage of them.
It wouldn't be fair to be in an auction league with you or something
Salary
one
cap
where you got to
league.
do money. You'd be manipulating the cap during the auction. You'd be beating everybody.
Yeah, so it's super chilled. It's you just got to hold. People are all panicking at the start, and you're just throw stuff in there that people are going to overpay for, and then it's hold, and then it's you just mop up a really good team of that kind of second tier.
All right. Josh, you got anything else?
I mean, I guess just everything you've given in this, half hour we've been talking has been awesome. I guess just to anybody out there who still thinks that the Browns gave Deshaun Watson the worst contract ever and it's going to derail the team for, the next 5-10 years, what is just one simple message, to kind of maybe get them to understand that that's not really the truth?
Yeah, so kind of looking at when they did the deal, and this question probably to throw at all 3 of you, unless you've seen me mention it before on Twitter. What was the last above average quarterback when they did Deshaun Watson's deal to get cut?
Probably never. Peyton Manning?
Oh, it was
Peyton Manning.
Peyton Manning. That's right. I did see that.
See it.
Okay.
So it was Peyton Manning when he got cut. He actually ended up signing a bigger deal with the next team. But that is how rare it is for anyone that's above average. Even Jared Goff. People were Jared Goff's trash. And it was he just kept going because teams were oh no, I'll give him a go in the Lions. And they were it's worked out for them. And he's good. He's not great, but it's one where if you're a quarterback, there's such a scarcity, you'll get a shot. So no one was ever really getting cut. We've now seen Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson, who there could be hypotheticals that they'd move off him. Is he worth $46 million a year based on the first 2 years? No. Fingers crossed he'll come good. But if we're looking at Jimmy Haslam spends $50 million a year more than average, well, Deshaun Watson's free. You've got an average roster and a free quarterback. Sorry, an average cost roster and a free quarterback. And that's why they're able to just compete. So Deshaun Watson's contract's not holding them back. Could he play better? 100%. If anyone tells you Deshaun Watson couldn't play better, they are lying through their teeth. But if he can get to above average, they can compete. And if he's top 8, they're in a shot with the Super Bowl every single year. And you don't need him to be that number 1, number 2, number 3. He just needs to be in that sort of 8 to 10 range, and everything's on the table. So I'm not worried. Yeah, he could do a lot better. And if he can do better, then everything comes together really, really well.
I mean, we've been on the podcast saying just even league average quarterback play with this roster, and you've kind of alluded to that already during the show, but that gets you to the playoffs. And then from there, who knows? But I mean, Joe Flacco, yes, he came in and had some really good games, but I mean, overall, is he an above average quarterback at this point in his career? No. We've seen that over the last, 5 years of his backup play. So it does attest to what you said about this roster, but I love that soundbite of the Browns have an average spend roster and a free quarterback.
And that's just the maths of it. And I think it was Ozzie Newsome. There was a quote, I'm pretty sure it was Ozzie, that effectively said, my job as a GM is to put together a roster every single year that gets to the playoffs. And then kind of whatever happens then is a bit of luck and whatever. But that's very much the job of the team is like, hey, get to the playoffs. And if you get to the playoffs every year over sort of an 8-year window, you should hopefully get to a Super Bowl and maybe you'll win one. And that's always going to be tough. You've got Josh Allen, you've got Patrick Mahomes. It's not an easy route. If I'd give 3 first-round picks just to join the NFC. But that's one where you've got to just get to the dance, get to the playoffs every year, and maybe one year it will happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we've been trying to tell people. Like, success in the NFL doesn't mean you win the Super Bowl every single year. That's an anomaly. Success is just continually putting good rosters on the field that can get you to the playoffs, and then let the chips fall where they may. So there's too many people out there who just think every team is the Chiefs or the 20-year run of the Patriots. Like, that's not realistic. That doesn't happen all the time.
And we want to talk about random luck and teams. The Chiefs were why the Browns traded up to draft Johnny Manziel, because John Dorsey was desperate to pick him. The Browns traded up because they wanted to get past him. The Browns were also going to pick Patrick Mahomes if he was there on the board. And it's why Patrick Mahomes camp, because he didn't want to go to Cleveland. He said he didn't name the team, but it's pretty obvious it was Cleveland in his bit. He reached out to the Chiefs and said, hey, guys, you've got to trade up or I'm getting drafted here. The Saints were apparently sniffing around the pick above them. But the Browns were planning to draft him if he came down to, I think it was 12. Mm-hmm. And so it's one where you just got, the luck sometimes falls slightly different ways. But people are like, oh, John Dorsey, phenomenal drafter. It was like he wanted to take Johnny Manziel. And the Browns were the ones that saved John Dorsey from having that reputation of, oh, he's drafted Johnny Football. The draft is a massive amount of luck as well. So, hey, maybe you would add Patrick Mahomes, but maybe not. And if give Hugh Jackson a year of Patrick Mahomes, is Patrick Mahomes the Patrick Mahomes we all know? Probably not.
No.
Well, you called the draft luck. I usually call it a crapshoot. So you're nicer than I am. But I got a lot out of that. Are you guys good? Justin, Josh, anything else? Awesome. Well, hey, man, we appreciate you jumping on here with us, even if it's 9, 10 o'clock at night where you are now. And you guys, I assume you don't have a holiday tomorrow. You have to work.
No, we've not got any holiday. You guys got one?
Yeah, we do. We have a holiday tomorrow. I'm off work, so that's exciting. But we'll let you go, get a good night rest, so you can get up and go to work, since for some reason you guys don't have a holiday tomorrow. But I appreciate you being here with us, man. This was awesome.
No, great to come on. If anyone's interested in my work, it's just at Jack Duffin on Twitter, JackDuffin, and then I have an article drop. If you're bored in the mornings when you wake up, it drops at 3 a.m. every day, 7 days a week. If you head over to the OBR, there's always some morning reading for you guys.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Appreciate it. I know we've posted his stuff, and we follow him. So, again, go check him out. That way you can argue with stupid NFL fans who say the Browns are in trouble. So we appreciate you taking your time, doing the Lord's work here for us. And thank you again. We'll have to have you back on again sometime. This was awesome.
100%.
Well, do you guys feel dumber now? Because I know I feel dumber. As Jack explained all those numbers I felt like you ever seen the GIF with what's his face from The Hangover whenever he's counting cards and all these signs are like going off in his head. That's what I feel like. When Alan's sitting there and all the equations and stuff are in his head as he's counting. I'm just like sitting here like he's just talking numbers and all this.
And then you got to fire up your back question.
Yeah. So I'm happy we were able to get him on. Big thank you to Jack Duffin. Again, go find him on X/Twitter. He's always putting out good stuff. You can also find him on OBR, like he mentioned. He puts out a daily article every morning at 3 a.m. So if you're getting up early for work, you can sit on the John for 20 minutes. You got some good reading material. I know Justin gets up like 2 a.m. to go to work. So he's always reading OBR stuff. He's learning his equations and his salary cap. He's going to be a smarter guy for it. But we appreciate Jack coming on, explaining to us how it works and how he kind of give us a bright outlook on the Browns' future, honestly, in terms of how we manipulate the salary cap and how it's sustainable over, the course of a decade. And that way, the big takeaway for me was we have roster flexibility. So we appreciate him coming on here, taking time with us on a Sunday. It's nighttime for him, so he was staying up late just to help us out. So we appreciate him being here. We appreciate you guys watching and listening. And we can't wait to give you a Cowboys preview later this week as it's week 1 of the NFL season. Hopefully, you guys are all excited. Hopefully, you got your fantasy drafts out of the way. And we'll see you guys sometime later this week when we preview the Cowboys.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Dawgs Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Twitter at the Dawgs Podcast. Get your thoughts on the show at thedogspodcast.com.
This episode is brought to you by Manly Bands. Dog Pack, if you followed the show for a while, you know that I recently got married. I got my wedding band at Manly Bands. Now, I opted for something a little more simple, so I just got a plain, simple, gold, polished band from Manly Bands, but that's not everybody, and I'm telling you, they've got so many cool different designs and materials available. They've got bands made out of Jack Daniel's whiskey barrels, meteorites, even dinosaur bones. It's so cool. Just head to manlybands.com, check out the selection, see what they have. They've even got build your own bands if you want to make a custom style band for yourself. And right now, use promo code DAWGS, DAWGS, at manlybands.com when you check out, and you'll get 25% off your order. 25% is a big deal. So make sure, if you guys are looking for a new wedding band, Blake mentioned last week or two on the show that, he's lost a lot of weight in the last year. And so his wedding band is a little too big for him. So he's thinking about getting a new one. And I told him, I said, just go to Manly Bands, see what they got. And the 25% off your order is such a great deal. You really can't beat it. So at least go check it out, see what they have. They've got some really cool stuff. And again, promo code DAWGS, DAWGS, if you decide to buy one, and you'll get 25% off of that purchase. If you don't know your ring size, you can order a free ring size guide. They'll ship it straight to you. You can punch out the little rings and put them on your finger to see which size fits you best. And then every single band you order comes with a free silicone ring for whenever you want to work out or go swimming or whatever you need a silicone band for. You get one for free shipped with your purchase of a Manly Band from manlybands.com. So check it out. Again, manlybands.com. Use promo code DAWGS for 25% off your order.